His family has, however, refuted claims that he was expected in the country in a week's time. Mangi Maina begins our broadcast tonight.
Yes, I think I'll be doing.
Dressed in a yellow polo shirt and trendy bluish khaki shorts, Raila Odinga spoke for the first time after speculations he was not too well in a foreign country where he had gone to seek medical treatment. In a video shared by her daughter Winnie Odinga, Raila says he can now breathe fresh air. The ODM leader, not so strong and energetic to dance to a reggae tune, thanked friends, the youth and supporters for goodwill messages, saying they help one recuperate faster.
It has just been amazing and it's just wonderful. It makes you recover so fast.
Earlier reports from his family said he had gone to seek medical attention in UAE following a lower back problem that was affecting one of his legs. And just like his unannounced departure for Dubai left many baffled, his recovery has been welcomed with delight by his supporters. Baba is indeed back on his feet, but his return back to the country remains unclear. And while Baba was away, the BBI Task Force Committee completed its validation process and is expected to submit its report to President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga anytime. The report has to be submitted to both of them and not to one individual. BBI seems too close to Raila's heart and he is determined to push its agenda. Only time will tell when he will jet back to the country to receive the report that will chart a way forward for the nation. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
DJ!
Elsewhere, schools might reopen in January 2021. This is according to Professor George Magoha, who held a consultative meeting with officials from all trade unions in education. Magoha says after holding meetings with the Ministry of Health, it appears as though the peak of the virus will be in September and might go down in January 2021. This has, however, elicited debate and insisting that the reopening of schools will depend on the virus and the status of coronavirus in the country. Our Education Affairs reporter Andrin Kilemi with the details.
The debate on when schools should resume has been ongoing since June, and the Ministry of Education has once again cast doubts on the September reopening dates following the spike in the COVID-19 numbers in the country.
We started with many options, and we have kept on narrowing the options. And today we have discussed the options that are according to what is happening in the country as at the moment. As you are aware, a few days ago, we had a peak of 278. And since that time, we are in the hundreds.
And now schools might just reopen in January 2021. Education CS Professor George Magoha has hinted delays on reopening both primary and secondary schools.
The peak is likely to come in September. And by the grace of God, perhaps taper down around January.
Addressing members of the fourth estate after a Wednesday morning meeting with officials of trade unions in education, Magoha disclosed that the Council of Governors suggested that schools remain closed until the COVID-19 curve flattens.
The position of the parents has been very firm that we don't open until we achieve stability, which means until the curve is flattened. And in my view, the parents are one of the major stakeholders.
However, the elephant in the room now is how schools will adhere to the 1.5 meter rule on social distancing, especially in public schools, which have a high population of learners.
Whatever is going to determine whether we open or not would depend on whether social distancing can be achieved in school.
It now appears as though moving the reopening dates to January 2021 is a strategy to defeat an educational calendar crisis rather than a default date informed by the status of COVID-19 in Kenya. If schools are to reopen in September as earlier communicated, it would be a nightmare for Magoha and team to streamline the education calendar, and the glitches could take months if not years to correct. On the other hand, reopening in January in 2021 would be strategic since all learning institutions would have to retain the status quo with learners picking up from their current classes. Andrin Kilemi, TV47, Nairobi.
Moving on, controversy has risen over the death of healthcare workers due to COVID-19, as the government says no healthcare worker has died from the pandemic, whereas the Union of Nurses claims that 2 nurses have died from the virus. This even as Kenya recorded the highest number of new COVID-19 infection cases at 307 cases in the last 24 hours. Zainab Mohammed reports.
Health workers are among the frontliners in the battle against COVID-19, a responsibility that comes with its own set of challenges, as many easily contract the virus due to their direct contact with COVID-19 patients. Controversy has, however, risen over the number of health workers who have succumbed to the virus. The Coalition of Nurses in Kenya say 2 nurses have succumbed to the virus, and the government is disputing that statement, saying all health workers who have contracted the virus are in good shape and that none has succumbed to the virus.
I'm glad to report that we have not lost a single healthcare worker to COVID-19 disease. And the latest reports of healthcare workers who tested positive were from Shalom Hospital in Athi River, and even those ones are doing very well under care.
Assorted PPEs that had been contributed by Chapmo and the other guy from China. They stole it. And the stealing happened with fellows in the Ministry of Health and those at the airport. I don't miss my words. Because when you steal those PPEs, you cause the death of our colleagues. You cause the death of Kenyans. And that is why we have lost 2 of our members.
Elsewhere, Kiambu Town Member of Parliament Jude Jomo is blaming the government for the hastened burial of his 84-year-old mother due to claims that she had died from COVID-19. According to the MP, his late mother was confirmed to be COVID-19 negative after several tests with other labs. And in the daily COVID-19 statistics,
today we have recorded the highest number of positive cases since the pandemic struck in our country. The highest number. We tested 3,591 samples over the last 24 hours, and of these, 307 returned positive. This number now pushes our caseload of those confirmed positive to 6,673. Out of a sample size of 173,355 that we have tested thus far. Today's number consists of 289 Kenyans and 18 foreigners. 215 are males, 92 are females. The youngest is 1 year old, the oldest is 81. In terms of counties, Nairobi leads with 154, Mombasa 38, Machakos 33, Kiambu 20, Narok 20, Kajiado 14, Busia 10, Kericho 4, Makueni and Nakuru 5 cases each, Kilifi, Kisumu, Kitui and Uasin Gishu 1 case each.
One person has succumbed to the virus as 50 others have recovered from the virus after receiving treatment from various hospitals in the country. For TV47, I'm Zainab Mohammed.
Well, all right, that story by Zainab Mohammed forms the basis of our discussion tonight. Our guest tonight is Peterson Wachira, the national chairman of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. Healthcare workers say they have lost 2 of their colleagues who have succumbed to the virus. The government, through the Ministry of Health, says no healthcare worker has died. You can be part of that discussion. Tweet us at TV47. Of course, the hashtag to use is TV47 News Tonight. You can call us on the number on your screen and text us on 22047. But that will come a little bit later in this broadcast. Let's move to other stories. President Uhuru Kenyatta has met Western Kenya leaders to discuss development projects in the region. The meeting discussed the government's effort to revive the ailing sugar sector, especially Mumias and Zoia sugar factories. The head of state assured the leaders of the government's commitment in reviving the sector by fast-tracking the implementation of the Sugar Task Force report. Moving on, Makueni Governor Kivutha Kibwana was put to task to explain how more than 140 million Kenya shillings stalled projects, despite some being paid for by the county government. Appearing before the Senate's Public and Investment Committee, chaired by Kisii Senator Sam Ongeri, senators claimed that the stalled projects may be a leeway for looting public resources.
That they have created a budget for drilling and equipping of boreholes in wards, and you can see from the preceding list, those are also boreholes. But these ones are ambiguous, with an ambiguous figure. And then your officers, Governor, are creating another item for operationalization of the same borehole. In real terms, when you drill a borehole, the person who is drilling the borehole operationalizes the borehole by making sure they pump out water. It is at that point that you pay the entire sum for completion of the project. So, Governor, that's the reason we are wondering, because if somebody has done a dry borehole, that person is not supposed to receive a penny, ideally, until they give you a project that is complete. So, in terms of the delay in disbursements, ideally you would have a borehole, and what you would have in this respect is a pending bill. Thank you, Chair.
You convene people in their locations or in their wards and tell them that what is available for prioritization of projects in that ward is 10 million. So let us hear what you think are of priority. And you are not allowed to budget beyond what is in the basket. So, Governor, what is happening in Makueni where you convene people and they ask you to bring KICC and you commit to it when you don't have the funds?
It has been severally pointed out that there was a time that I demanded accountability in this country, and I'm not about to relinquish following that path. That's a very, very, very essential path. It is indeed a path that makes what we do better. So I want to appreciate Senate, to appreciate all the institutions that are supporting Senate here. And that is why you have had chair and committee. We have said any information you require, anything that you require, we will be able to supply, any discussion, because we know that we try to do as best as possible for the people of Makueni, and therefore there is really nothing to hide. There is monies that are unabsorbed, but they are committed because already we have said that there is work in Kalamba, there is work in other places. So when you look at the accounts, it's not enough to say how much has been immediately absorbed in terms of has been paid out, because if this work was more than 1 year, then it means that the other money is, there is money that is committed and the work is ongoing, and therefore there is reallocation so that you can pay for that work when it is complete. We have major projects that are, which go across 1 year, 2 years, and so on.
You're watching TV47 News tonight with me, Abu Bakr Abdullahi. 17 minutes past 9 p.m. Time for us to take a short break here on the news. I will be back with much more after this break. Welcome back. Thank you for choosing to stay with us. Let's get to more news. Now, Chief Justice David Maraga has refuted claims that he's taking an early retirement. Maraga's statement coming amidst pressure for his exit ahead of January 2021 retirement. Maraga spoke during the launch of the e-filing system. David Mudoka reports.
Chief Justice David Kenani Maraga says he is going nowhere. Despite speculations of an early retirement, Maraga is set to retire in January next year, but there has been claims he might opt out for an early retirement just like his predecessor to allow time for the recruitment of the next Chief Justice.
I'm still around for a while. We have quite a number of things to do. As you know, the judiciary has a very, very strict protocol. A retiring judge takes terminal leave. So when my time comes, I will receive a letter from the CRJ asking me to take terminal leave. I believe that will be somewhere in November. So I'm still around. Don't worry.
But Maraga has been under immense pressure to either resign or exit voluntarily ahead of time marking a bumpy homestretch for the president of Kenya's Supreme Court. Maraga found himself in the middle of a dramatic incident on Tuesday after a woman claimed to have sired a child with Maraga, but she says he has neglected the family. A section of lawyers defending Maraga against the allegations, with some terming it driven by external forces. Maraga's relationship with the executive has been a rough one after he nullified the 2017 President Uhuru Kenyatta's win, the president having refused to appoint 41 judges as well as budget cuts among the issues crippling the judiciary.
I may tell you, in November last year, we were at the final stages of completing procurement for servers that we so badly need. Just before we issued the tenders, we approved the tenders, we had a budget cut.
Maraga was speaking when he presided over the launch of the e-filing system at Supreme Court on Wednesday in a bid to streamline operations in courts within Nairobi. The system is expected to gradually extend to Mombasa and Kisumu cities before culminating in a progressive national rollout.
The singular most important step in our long journey to harnessing information technology as an integral part of our service delivery to our people. These advances are carefully guided by a robust judiciary ICT policy, whose overall objective is to provide a governance framework for the acquisition, use and disposal of ICT in the judiciary.
The ODPP and other court users within the criminal justice systems have been using ICT platforms to file, conduct hearings, deliver judgments and rulings in line with protocols issued by the Ministry of Health.
David Muthoka, TV47.
Moving on, President Uhuru Kenyatta has last evening signed into law the Finance Bill. Some of the amendments in the Finance Act include the zero rating of VAT on maize, cassava and flour for 6 months. Now, the new Finance Act also extends the zero rating of VAT on cooking gas for 1 year. Paul Kirobi reports.
The Finance Act extends the zero rating of value-added tax on maize, cassava and wheat flour. This is expected to reduce the price of basic products in the country following complaints from Kenyans. In 2019, a 2-kilogram packet of flour retailed at 115 shillings, up from 80 shillings. In 2019, betting companies received a huge blow after Parliament imposed a 20% excise tax on all betting stakes before being locked out of the country. The finance bill has also scrapped off the 20% excise tax on sportsbook stakes. The tax had been raised from 10% to 20% in September 2019. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Commission EPRC announced a price hike that raised a litre of petroleum to 112 shillings in Nairobi and as high as 120 shillings in some towns. The reintroduction of the value-added tax on cooking gas in 2019 made Kenyans find another way of obtaining energy resources. Reporting for TV47, my name is Andrine Kilemi.
Elsewhere, it will be a long and tedious recovery process for the tourism industry post-COVID-19. Tourism CS Najib Balala is optimistic that the sector may take 2 years, but sector analysts say it could take as long as 5 years. Balala says the country's revenue from the sector will reduce by more than 80 billion shillings in the 2020-2021 financial year. Joash Onsare tells us more.
The Ministry of Tourism launched the Magical Kenya Tourism Health and Safety Protocols in the New Normal campaign. The event was attended by Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i, Health CS Mutai Kagwe, and the US, UK, and German envoys.
It's now a reality that the virus could become endemic, and we must all be prepared to live with it and resume normalcy under the prevailing circumstances as global efforts to find vaccines continue.
Kenya lost 80 billion shillings in the 2019-2020 financial year, which translates to 50% revenue from the tourism sector. Tourism CS Najib Balala says it will take long for the sector to recover.
So we lost 80 billion in terms of revenue to government. And then in the next financial year, which is 2020-2021, we shall be lucky even to get 20% of that revenue into our economy. That's why we need to have the stimulus packages and stimulus initiatives so that we can fast track the revival of the industry and be able to get people in business and pay their taxes.
The stakeholders in the tourism sector have been urged to abide by the outlined procedures aimed at combating COVID-19, geared towards gradual opening of the economy.
All tourism and related businesses and service providers should embrace this participatory approach by subscribing, adhering to, and implementing the standard operating procedures.
Further, Najib Balala says the government will empower SMEs through investment since macro business have enjoyed in the past.
We have always talked about the macroeconomy. We have not talked about the microeconomy where the SMEs are affected. So this time, yes, we are going to invest heavily in the SME sector.
On the other hand, the Chair Council of Governors Wycliffe Oparanya on his Twitter account says, I quote, after consultation with my colleagues, we advise His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta to gradually open the economy. Enforcement of measures and protocols aimed at combating COVID-19 pandemic should continue to be enforced during the process. Joash Onsare, TV47, Nairobi.
Elsewhere, Cabinet Secretary for ICT, Innovations and Youth Affairs, Joe Musheru, today launched and unveiled a motorized handcart and a self-charging tuk-tuk during the launch of the National Youth Service Strategic Plan at the NYS headquarters in Ruaraka, Nairobi.
Pongezi sana. Don't worry, I have written it before. Wewe kaa mbele. Mimi. Okay. Very good. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Everybody General, we are going back to our seats.
Thank you, Bwana Batai. Thank you, Professor Madam. Thank you very much.
What would make a difference in this country is, are we able to address the multiple challenges that we face? So if we can be able to make a mkokoten that does not use a lot of energy the way we see people pulling a mkokoten, and you can motorize it, then it will make it easier and somebody is going to do more with the less energy.
The imagination of our youth can, with the right support, become the fuel that powers our achievements of Vision 2030 and the achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals. There are more than 1 million youth in Kenya alone who use manual handcarts to earn a living daily. As leaders in the policy space, ours is to ensure that we create an environment that will support innovators, entrepreneurs, researchers to step up and explore, take risks, and figure out things by creating an enabling environment that eases the doing of all these things.
You're watching TV47 News Tonight with me, Abu Bakar Abdullahi, here on TV47. And as earlier promised, we are talking matters, the front liners in as far as the health is concerned. The Ministry of Health refuted claims of healthcare unions, who earlier on today said that 2 of their colleagues have lost their lives to COVID-19. We'll make sense of that after this break. Remember, our guest tonight is Peterson Wachira, who is the national chairperson of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. Text us on 22047, call us on the number on your screen. The hashtag to use is TV47 News Tonight. I will be back after this break. Welcome back. Thank you for choosing to stay with us. As earlier promised, let's get to our discussion now and bring in our guest. Dr. Peterson Wachira, the National Chairman of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, joins us on the broadcast now. Healthcare workers say 2 of their colleagues have succumbed to the virus. The ministry has refuted that claim. Which way for healthcare workers and frontliners? Peterson, thank you for making time for us. First, to check some terms and positions. Is it the view of the healthcare workers tonight that 2 of their colleagues have lost their lives due to COVID-19?
It is not a view, it is a fact that we have lost 2 of our colleagues, one from Kajiado County and the other one from Nairobi County. They are not in government employment. They are from private facility and from University of Nairobi, which is a parastatal. And it's true that we have lost 2 of our colleagues. Why would we, as the leadership of health workers, want to allude to something that is not true? This is a very unfortunate sin.
All right, Peterson, you say it is fact and true. Listen to what the Director General of Health, the Ministry of Health, Patrick Amoth, says, and he says, and I quote, "Since we started reporting cases, 186 healthcare workers have contracted the virus, 102 are female, 84 are male. We have not lost a single healthcare worker to COVID-19. This is the Ministry of Health saying this. Are you disputing what the Ministry of Health is saying?
Yeah, of course, we have our facts. If they are saying that there is nobody who has died from COVID-19, there is no medical personnel who has died from COVID-19, then we are disputing it because we know for a fact that we have lost 2 people. And I think it's very demotivating for them to come out and if they do not have the information, we are here, they can ask us if truly we have some people who have died and we can be able to guide them, but they should not refute this because it demotivates and demoralizes those who are on the ground.
All right, the unions say their colleagues, 2 of them have lost their lives. The ministry refutes that. Where then is this discrepancy arising from?
I think there is a big problem, and there is a big problem with follow-up because what is supposed to happen when you have soldiers going to war, similar to what health workers are doing now, anytime you're having any infection or death, it should be the mandate of the government, and that is the Ministry of Health, to investigate and make sure that they get to the bottom of the problem as to why people are getting infected and why they should even die. So there is a disconnect, and I think that is why we have been saying that we need to work together. They need also to seek information from us so that we can be able to bring out the gaps that we are having. But I think refuting such claims without having to ascertain and calling us, I don't think that is proper.
All right, finally on the numbers and the discrepancies, if then there is a disagreement on the number as few as, and of course with a heavy heart 2 deaths, what then guarantees that the numbers that the Ministry of Health and healthcare workers are putting out as the statistics of COVID-19 cases, what puts a truth value to it, if at all you are disagreeing with these numbers as of now?
As for the total number of infected, we are not disagreeing on that. But on the fact about those who have lost lives, I think there is information that they are lacking, and I would not use this to say that I want to dispute all the numbers that they are churning out because I know there are mechanisms put in place.
But isn't that not opening?
They get the numbers.
Isn't that not opening a window of suspicion for the numbers?
I won't like to cast aspersions, Abu. What I would say is that on this one, they got it wrong. Yes.
All right, let's move from the numbers, but still within the numbers. Kenya has tested 100,000 173,355 tests as of now, of which 6,673 are confirmed cases, with over 140 deaths. If one is to look at the numbers on a face value, it begs the question of how mass are these numbers vis-a-vis the population?
I think there are some few facts that we need to consider in this scenario. Number one, we are not testing everyone. We are doing targeted testing. And number two, this is not like Ebola. So many people who get COVID-19, actually not COVID-19, but a SARS-CoV-2 infection, do not actually develop any symptom. And that means not many people will actually be able to come out to be tested because they don't feel the need for them to be able to do that. And that may contribute as to why we are probably not having a greater number having been infected. But remember also, it means that the measures put in place are working. And so we didn't have a lot of infections. But remember that we have been in the earlier phases of this pandemic. And actually now we are going to the exponential phase of the curve. And going forward now you'll start seeing huge numbers coming out of this. You can see like today we had 307. So we are in the exponential phase, and maybe going into August and September you might now start being such huge numbers, and especially with the reopening of the economy. So I don't think we can actually say that the numbers are low. Because if you were to do the percentage probably that you're having with that, then you multiply with the 45 million Kenyans that you're having, then you can tell what number we would be talking about the positive cases, which is actually a huge number.
All right, you say the numbers are not low, but if you look at the tests that the ministry has stated to have carried, 173,355, one will argue this is low compared to countries that have done far much greater numbers in as far as tests are concerned.
Yeah, as far as testing is concerned, we are actually not doing enough, because what we are doing is not actually mass testing. We are doing what we call targeted testing. If we were to do mass testing, which for now I don't think we have the capacity because we do not have enough kits, then we will be seeing such huge numbers as for now. But currently, we cannot actually say that we are doing mass testing. What we are doing is just targeted testing for some areas that we consider to be high risk. And if we were to get now into the real mass testing, we would actually be recording higher numbers than we are doing now.
All right, Peterson, in an interview with the VOA, you said, and I quote, "We have seen the mitigation of such virus is a communal venture. You cannot protect yourself alone. It must communally be done so as to be able to mitigate," which begs the question, what is the individual responsibility in mitigating the spread of this virus?
Thank you, and this is a very important point. And maybe as I come to that, let me say that there is somewhere we got it wrong from the beginning. Public health interventions are not supposed to be criminalized. They are not supposed to be policed. That is where we lost it, because once you criminalize or police public health interventions, then it means that people stop using these measures to protect themselves, and they do out of duty and fear from government. And it's evidenced if you look at people in the streets. Most of them are having a mask, but are not actually using the mask to protect themselves, because they don't feel that they own these measures. They only feel they are doing a duty to the government. And what I meant by saying communally is that the way we are supposed to do the public health containment measures is that we are supposed to come down to the community, educate them, make them understand on these measures, so that they themselves can be able to preach to each other and utilize these measures to be able to bring the number of transmissions down. And I must say that I'm a very concerned person that if we are not going to carry out robust risk communication and health education campaigns across the country before we reopen, then we are going to see a very huge surge in transmissions because Kenyans have actually abandoned the containment measures because they don't feel that they own them. They feel that the state has imposed them on them.
All right, you say the process of mitigation should not be criminalized. I wonder, do you in your own observation think this in particular and in reference to Kenya has been criminalized?
Yeah, you see, for a fact, when you find people who are maybe outside during the curfew hours and then you want to quarantine them, when you find a family that is driving that came from a similar house and because they do not have masks, you want to take them to quarantine, when you have health workers coming from work who are essential services and others like journalists, and then you want to take them to quarantine, then you are criminalizing and you are using brutal force to enforce. And when you do that, it actually loses meaning to the common person because they no longer see it as a public health measure. They see it as a state imposition mechanism to control them.
All right, Peterson, I asked you the question of individual responsibility primarily because of what the health CAS Rashid Aman said. He says the number of positive cases is high because many people are not adhering to containment measures advised by the government. Many may be a disputed word, isn't it? Just to give credits to Kenyans equally who are observing these containment measures.
Yeah, we must congratulate and give credit to those, to the few, because we have to be factual, to the few who are observing these measures. But a majority of us are actually not doing this. And I agree, it's a personal responsibility. Because we must understand that the measures put in place, the hygiene, the hand hygiene, the respiratory hygiene, the masking, and the social distancing are personal measures that we are supposed to take to protect ourselves and even protect the people who are close to us. And so it boils down to individual. If that individual does not understand and own up, and that is what I'm trying to say, that we must find ways, because we are the ones who made the mistake at first. So we must find ways of mending that mistake and ensuring that we make people feel that they actually own these mitigation measures and that they can utilize them to ensure that we bring the rate of transmission down.
All right, Peterson, the World Health Organization says the virus is not ending anytime soon. And given the fatality rate of Kenya, which is at 2.3%, which is better than the global average of 6.7% fatality rate, there are those who are of the opinion that open up the country or even harbor that thought of an opening up at a time when the country has equally reported the highest number in a single day. As a medic, if you were to advise the president, assuming that he is watching this, would you advise him to open up the country?
Yeah, let me first say that let us not look at our death rate as per now, because we are in the early phases. We are just getting to the exponential phase. And so this conversation maybe we can be having somewhere in September, October. That is when we'll be having the highest numbers. And after reopening, then we are going to have the vulnerable group probably infected, and then we can gauge our numbers. But if I were to advise the president, number one, I would say that I'm in support of reopening of the economy in phases. And this is because countries do not close down forever. They close down for some time so that they can understand the outbreak. They can put measures in place to ensure they mitigate and protect their people, and then they open up so that people can continue with their business when they are protected. And I think we came forward as the health practitioners and we said this, that we are giving a strategy to the president so that he can be able to open up as he protects his people. And we said,
and where is that delicate balance of opening up the country and protecting the people? On a day in which, such as today, the country recorded 307 new cases, the highest number. The numbers are increasing, but it seems as though the will to reopen is increasing equally.
Yeah, you see, the numbers will increase. There is nothing abnormal here. We actually expect by September we might even be recording even more than 2,000 cases per day. But I think if you look at the other side, because you have to strike a balance, look at the unintended effects, look at the pregnancies. Where are they getting the pregnancies if they are not trying to get some money probably to help their family because probably they are not getting something? Look at the cases of suicide, homicide, the crime rates that we are seeing going up. From our own experience, some of our patients who are living with some conditions and diseases, they are not even able to afford their drugs. So many people have lost their jobs. And so there must be this balance. And that is why we are providing a strategy that can actually be able to protect Kenyans as they go back to their work, as we reopen the economy. And what we are saying is, let us look at the Cuban model and replicate it in Kenya to work for us during these COVID-19 times. Let us employ about 10,000 health workers, and the president can give a directive because he has given in the past when he wanted the ratio of police to population to be as per the UN standards. The 10,000, let us use them because the rate of vaccination has actually gone down. And that is a recipe for another outbreak in future of probably measles, polio, and others. So let these 10,000 do door-to-door campaign vaccinating children. Also, the vulnerable group, which is the aged and those living with comorbid conditions or pre-existing diseases and conditions, let them not come out and go to hospital. Let us employ health workers so that we can use them to go to where these patients and clients are in their homes.
You say
and manage them from there.
Peterson, you say employ more healthcare workers. Are the health facilities up to standard to accommodate an increase in number which you are suggesting?
What I'm trying to say, it actually doesn't translate into an exponential increase in the numbers. Because what we are saying is protect the vulnerable. Who is the vulnerable? The under 2 years, the aged, defined to be over 55 years, and those living with other diseases and conditions. So how do we protect them and ensure they don't get to the hospital? Let them not come out and go to the hospital because as they do that, as they commute, we are exposing them. Let us employ medics and use technology so that we can go to their own homes and treat them from there. For the few that may get exposed, then we can be able to manage them in the facilities that we are having. But that is not to say that we actually don't need to increase our bed capacity and our equipment to ensure that we are ready for this.
All right, you have preempted my next question, which is on bed capacity. So far, 12 counties have achieved the 300 bed capacity instruction by President Uhuru Kenyatta. That is Mombasa, Machakos, Nyeri, Kiambu, Uasin Gishu, Makueni, among others, Kisii as well, Kilifi, Murang'a, Vihiga, and Kericho. There are equally other counties that have not achieved this target. First, when we talk of a bed capacity, Peterson, as a medic, what are we talking about?
We are actually talking about the available number of beds with accompanying equipment and human resource to be able to manage anybody who will fall sick and require to utilize that bed so that they can actually be treated and recover from this COVID-19.
And is there a distinction between the description of a bed capacity and what otherwise some would say is ICU facility or ICU bed?
Yeah, there is.
There is.
For the ICU bed capacity, that will mean specifically for ICU. But when we are talking about bed capacity, we are talking about all the facilities that will be utilized by these people from when they become severe and they need to be admitted in hospital to when probably they may need ICU care.
All right, Peterson, I understand we are out of time, but nonetheless, the final and the last of questions on the show tonight. You are part of the 155 Kenyans who went to Liberia and Sierra Leone in 2015 to help combat the Ebola outbreak, which claimed more than 11,000 lives. What lessons have you learned from that that can be translated to the fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, I think the lessons that we have been able to learn, and as we came back, I was actually the team leader, and I handed to the government, to the DMS then, a report including the lessons learned and what we needed to do as a country to ensure that we don't fall into that trap again. And I must say that some of them we have not been able to attain, because one of the lessons is that you must have your health system very strong before you get this outbreak, strengthened enough. And in the case of Kenya, you can see it actually caught us unawares, though we actually had more than a month to learn from even the other countries. We are talking in the middle of an outbreak is when we are talking about bed capacity. We are talking about matters of training in the middle of outbreak. So the lesson is that because we can only learn from this and prepare for the next one, because I can assure you there will be another outbreak in future.
All right.
We must ensure that we have the right staffing norms and standards, the right mix of professionals manning our health facilities, and the right equipment at all times.
And we leave the discussion at that point. Peterson Wachira, the National Chairman of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, thank you for making time for us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
All right, that is the National Chairman of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. Of course, our discussion touching on the number of healthcare workers and their unions say have died of COVID-19, although the ministry refuted that. Time for us to take a short break. We still have sports news. I will be back after this break. Welcome back. Let's get to the world of sports now. And a boxing club in Nairobi's Mathare slum is offering boxing lessons to dozens of school children stuck at home because of the coronavirus pandemic. Trainers are now using a community center to train in shift to meet the demand. TV47's Julius Juma reports.
There is the norm here at the Mathare North Boxing Club in Nairobi's informal settlement of Mathare. School-going children who have been condemned at home by the COVID-19 pandemic delving into boxing at least until the situation improves. Boys and girls all dancing to the boxing tune for varied reasons, as offers Vanessa Wanjera.
Train because I want to be a champion, and instead of staying in the slums, I come here and start training with my colleagues here in the gym, and I prefer training than idling in the slums with those girls who can lead me to bad ways.
The 14-year-old took up boxing 2 years ago, but she already has big plans.
This boxing has helped me because I know I can defend myself in any ways, even if I am attacked by my fellow girls or my enemies. Yes.
The facility's assistant coach John Kimani, who is a product of the club that was launched in 1985, reveals that services offered here are free of charge as a way of giving back to the community.
Mimi nilifunzwa na nikashika.
hadi nikafika kupewa hii ni ya captain. Sasa mimi nilishika sana na pia mimi nisaidie wenzangu juu most of the time unaweza pata kocha yuko. Unaweza pata kocha yuko. Sasa inabidi mimi nimechukulia, unaona? Si ati juu yuko zoezi kwenye hivyo, hapana, mimi nachukulia na train wenzangu na venye sasa kuna shule tuko wengi, unaona? Na kocha hizi manage kutrainisha wote. Sasa inabidi mimi namsaidia.
The gym has measures in place to conform to the government guidelines in mitigating the spread of COVID-19. The program will help keep the children fit and out of trouble, head coach Bernard Muruiri hopes so.
Sana mkiangalia hapa nyuma, vijana wengi sisi sana kwa tunadili na vijana wa shule. Sana huyo tunadili nao hapa. Wengi ukiangalia hapa, badala ya huko mtaani, sisi tuna encourage wakamkufanya mazoezi nao baada kwa mtaani pale hivyo.
More children in the neighborhood are training at the gym than usual, and it has become a crucial outlet for local kids who have been forced to stay at home because schools remain shut due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Reporting for TV47, I'm Julius Juma.
Kenyan Premier League defending champions Gor Mahia are set to hold their elections on August 8th. Gor Mahia chairman Ambrose Rachier will be contesting for another term after making a U-turn on his decision to leave the club in December 2019. The 70-year-old recently claimed that the club was undergoing turbulent moments that need his leadership, stating that he will only leave when things get rosy.
Our boat has been rocked. I have been the captain of the boat, and the boat has been rocked first by the departure of the sponsor and now by the pandemic. And for that reason, I have decided that as a captain, you do not let the boat sink when you are directing it. So we are going to look at different aspects here and there. And when the boat is stabilized, I will still carry out my intention, that is to leave.
English Premier League now, and Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola tonight with me, Abu Bakr Abdullahi. As always, on behalf of the entire team that made this production possible, bye for now, but enjoy the rest of our programs.